Within Temptation are back with an album that's futuristic, symphonic, heaps of metal, and way more than a sprinkling of pop. But is it enough to make this album irresistible? Turn away from the camera. Go on, turn away from the camera. It wasn't that bad. That was the worst one yet. You've been doing this for over a year. You're supposed to be getting better. You're just getting worse. Go on, turn away. Fucking disgusting. Welcome back to another video. What a slog it has been to get this one going today. Jesus Christ. It just snowed on my fair hills of Englandhamshire. I'm here today to review the new Within Temptation album, Resist. Once again, I don't have a physical copy of the album to be able to show you guys. I pre-ordered the album on Amazon and I was told, yeah, you'll get it in about a week after the release date, which is fucking useless. I then braved the independent record store that I have hitherto stayed away from due to the hipster twat that works therein. Luckily he wasn't in there today. Hopefully the Lord of all that is good removed him from the face of the earth. But they did not have the album. And then I went to HMV. As polite as they were in there, they didn't have either album in there. And they asked me when the release date was, to which I replied, yesterday. And they replied, oh well, we won't have it in yet then. Maybe I'm just old school, I just thought albums came out on the day they were released. But so Resist, this is the band's first album since 2014's Hydra, and I believe it is the longest between album releases the band have ever done. There's been a lot of reasons for this. I think the band in general were pretty burnt out and dissatisfied with the direction that they went on with Hydra. Not that they necessarily disliked the album, but I think they intended to push the boundaries and experiment a bit more with the album than I think they eventually did. And on top of this, vocalist Sharon Adele, not only was she burnt out, but she suffered some severe writer's block, and not only that, had a lot of personal issues that she needed to address and work out. Now Sharon herself put out an album, a solo album in 2017, at the tail end of 2017, called My Indigo. I think in this she documented a lot of the personal issues that she took time off for. And it was not long after the release of that album that it was announced that Within Temptation were already back in the studio and they were already working on songs for a new album. So this has been a pretty long awaited effort, I guess. So with this album I think they wanted to address some of the issues that they had with Hydra, pushing things a bit differently, and I think they're one of those bands that have always kind of changed with each album, and I always respect that. I always respect bands who do that. Now this is a very heavily pop influenced album, very apparent in all the structures of the song, but they've still got a lot of that symphonic metal that's in there. There's still some great heavy riffs in here, and of course Sharon's incredible voice. Now conceptually speaking, the album deals with our rights, privacy and humanity itself, thanks to the digitalized age that we now live in. Of course all of us are on social media, I am right now, and so much of ourselves is out there for marketeers and people who target us for marketing. God, more people. So many people up here today. It's fucking annoying. We're all labelled, I guess. And that's a big part of this album, I think. Right, without further ado, let's get in the songs. First up, we've got The Reckoning. And this one features Jacoby Shaddix from Papa Roach, of course, duetting with Sharon, and they do a good job, to be fair. It sounds great. They really do complement each other's voices very well. There's a real groove and swagger to this song that's very pleasing. In terms of the tempo and kind of feel of it, it very much reminds me of Columbia by Oasis. Might sound like an odd comparison, but it really does have that, you know, groove, just like kind of makes you want to nod your head, and just yeah, head nodding is a thing with music. First thing I noticed as well, I really enjoyed the mix of the album. I enjoyed the sound of the album. It's got a very heavy low end register to it. Kind of reminded me a bit of Korn's The Paradigm Shift. Got that real heavy bass going on. The opening lyrics to the album go thusly: as cold as stone they march in darkness, enslaving the young and killing their fathers, but soon they'll know the path they've chosen has carved their faith in stone. There's kind of a pulse-like quality to the drums throughout this song as well. That sounds like a pulse. Oh God. A powerful anthemic song and a real solid start to the album. I enjoyed this one a lot. Next up we have Endless War, and Sharon delivers an almost reggae-tinged vocal delivery at the beginning of this one. 'Cause you're fighting an endless war. You're fighting an endless war, hunting a miracle. And when you reach out for stars, they just cut you down. Before another heavy riff kicks in and some operatic wailing. It's actually very good, to be fair. There's a lot of electronica moments throughout this album as well, which really adds nicely to the atmosphere. Another very anthemic song that has a real sci-fi feel that permeates the entirety of the album. And the song ends with a synthetic voice telling us, self-destruct sequence activated. Guess they must have pissed someone off. Next up we have Raise Your Banners, and this one features Anders Friden from In Flames. This one I found to be one of the standout tracks on the album. Anders and Sharon worked incredibly well together. Their voices bounced off one another very well. The riff in this one is a very, very Rammstein feel. In fact, so much so it very much reminded me of Ich Tu de Weh. And I loved the chorus on this one. Blood for freedom. So raise your banner, fight your war. Break the silence, no remorse. Won't die within. Blood for freedom. Next up we have Supernova. This one starts out with a trippy progressive keyboard line, and yet again another incredibly catchy chorus in an album of catchy choruses. We get a cool use of some Gregorian style chanting on the bridge section of this as well, and there's a really thick drum sound on this track as well, in an album of thick sounding drums. Another highlight. Next up is Holy Ground, and Sharon has an almost rap-like cadence on the opening vocals on this one, and it sounds as though she's got a bit of a beef with someone. It's been a while since I told you that I hate you. You've turned the truth inside out. Don't turn your back when I face you, or I'll make you. You turn my world upside down. I wasn't so taken with some of the verses on this one, but once again the chorus is absolutely irresistible. In an album of we get it. Next up we have In Vain, a very pop quality to this one. The entire album is pop influence, we established that in the intro. It has to be said that every song on the album up to this point pretty much follows a very similar pop structure. But it's a very pleasing one, very 80s inspired one, and as I was alive in the 80s and listening to a lot of 80s music, it's very pleasing to these old crumpled ears. Next up we have Firelight, and this one features Jasper Steverlinck. Steverlinck. No idea who he is, some folky bloke. As I just mentioned, a lot of the previous songs follow a very similar pop structure. This was the first one that kind of has a bit more of a variation and kind of breaks away a bit. I just heard somebody say something. Fucking arseholes. This one has a much more of a darker, sinister sort of vibe to it, but in a really cool way. It's got kind of a almost darkly folk gospel type of vibe to it in many ways, and it builds up to another pleasing chorus. When all the days go by a firelight, we'll never fade out in the night, and we are estranged, we're drawn to the flame, we're like fire to the rain. I can assure you it sounded nothing like that. Once again, they've made another good choice in terms of the duet here, as Sharon and Jasper work very well together. There's a cool sort of spaghetti western style sort of guitar at the tail end of the song as well. Not sure it was worth mentioning, but I just did so. Next up we have Mad World. Some real drive in this song with some fat guitars, some really huge sounding drums, and some very, very 80s inspired keyboards in this one. I enjoyed this song a lot. We want to scream our pain and break away from the dark. Caught in this wicked game, we know that nothing stays the same. Because we're living in a mad world. Mad world. We're living in a mad world. We're living in a mad world. Mad world. We're living in a mad world. Mad world. Could you just have recited some of the chorus, not all of it? Duly noted. Next up we have Mercy Mirror. I guess this one would be the power ballad of the album, and it sounds great. Another hugely 80s inspired influence, and Sharon sounds fantastic. I know that I'm usually very positive about albums in general, but I'm genuinely finding it very difficult to find anything wrong with this album. It's just everything about it just works. Every song is a joy to listen to, and quite frankly I enjoyed it. I don't give a fuck what you think. They weren't judging you. They're always judging, sitting there and watching and judging and sitting like some sort of a judge on a body accepting sitting device. Where does this come from? And the final track on the album, Trophy Hunter, a very heavy gent style riff kicks off this song, and I guess this is pretty much the heaviest song on the album. There's some really nice riffs in this one actually. Not necessarily my favourite song on the album, this one, but certainly some decent riffs in it. And that's the album, and I'm going to give it a score of 8 out of 10. I kind of joked earlier about me being very favourable towards albums This is genuinely really pleasing album to listen to. There's a lot to enjoy on this. Every song has got huge choruses, just sounds great. Sharon is by far the standout on this album. She just sounds fantastic. She sounds great. Give this album a shot if you're a doubter or somebody who's not really given the band a chance before. I think you'll be pretty pleased with what you hear on this album. Very good, very fun, very enjoyable. Check it out. I think that pretty much wraps this video up. Been a difficult one to do, this one. Been quite a trek getting up here. Way too many people around, which always frustrates me. I've got no right, but it fucking does. But having said that, Ian Brown released his Ripples album. I think it was like a month earlier than was expected. So I did manage to pick up a physical copy of that. So at least I'll have that for my next review, which will be in a couple of days. So yes, I'll be reviewing that one. Also, hopefully if I've got the time to do it, I certainly intend to, I'm going to get done my top 10 cover songs list. Favourite top 10 covers songs. Pretty self-explanatory in the title, I think. Hopefully I'll get a PMA video in there as well on my other channel. But yes, this has been arduous enough. So I think I'm going to try and enjoy the rest of the walk now. Oh God, it's been a tough one today.